The epilogue, which I was honored to be asked to write, was very difficult. It's far too easy to paint every reign in black and white. Peter the Great was good, Paul I was bad, Alexander III was firm, and Nicholas II was weak. Every reign and every era have good and bad, and leaders are responsible for both. As humans, we want heroes and villains and a very clear picture, but in point of fact, Nicholas's reign provided both positive growth and negative actions. Under Nicholas, there were enormous strides in agriculture and in industrial production. There were huge economic leaps forward and enormous progress in health and education and social services. The evidence of this is very easy to find in census information and diplomatic annuals, and the fact that this has been ignored or considered unimportant in the face of the end of the reign is not surprising. But in fact, the education initiatives of Nicholas II were so successful, the Soviets kept them and built on them, later taking credit for the rise in literacy and education. It's not surprising that contemporary Russians are unaware of this. I myself was unaware of them until I went looking. Nicholas clearly felt that it was his sacred obligation to maintain the oaths that he took to preserve the fundamental laws, which included the autocracy. He was not, however, inured to the fact that times were changing rapidly, and he was, of course, forced to accept the fact that after 1905 he was no longer an autocrat. He was the first and only constitutional monarch of Russia. When any governmental system changes radically, there is a period of time of adjustment, and after 1905, many of the former rights of the sovereign were curtailed by the Constitution, and as a result, decisions were in the hands of the Duma and the Senate. In many cases, after 1905, there were no applicable governmental precedents that applied, and so Russia was forced to reinvent the wheel, as it were. I would say, however, that Nicholas retained the feeling that his consecration as emperor formed for him an inviolable contract with God and with the nation that he was born to rule. And as a result, the abdication was likely the most painful decision of his life. He was betrayed by those around him, and I don't think that it could be said that he stubbornly insisted on retaining monarchy for personal benefit. To historians and those outside of the Orthodox world, the answer is, of course it was a sign of weakness, to place his faith in providence and in a mystery, rather than to attempt to achieve his goals through self-will. But to Orthodox Christians, however, to leave yourself in the hands of God and to turn your own will over to God is proof of an infinite strength. He faced the indignities of dethronement, imprisonment, and the death of a martyr with humble dignity and kindness and a great good humor which was noted by everyone, even those who mocked and ultimately murdered him. The same murderers he forgave and hoped that no one would seek retribution on his behalf, and there's a strength in that beyond human comprehension. It's difficult for us in the 21st century to understand the enormous differences between our own families and the imperial family. They were raised to live in duty and in service, and their personal opinions mattered very little. They were expected to marry strangers, live in foreign lands. They were frequently raised by tutors and nurses and soldiers, and in fact, lived lives of really quite dutiful monotony. But Nicholas and Alexandra were an exception. perhaps because Nicholas had grown up in a very happy family, to which I think the Romanovs owe a debt to the charming Danish-born Dowager Empress, and because Alexandra had a mournful and quite sad childhood because her mother and siblings died when she was young. I think that Nicholas and Alexandra were committed to having a very happy family. It's clear in every page of every diary and in every letter that this family enjoyed a unique and blessed internal happiness that was unaffected by anything that befell them. They were a model of joy and happiness, and that's an example to all of us. A wonderful priest I know said that those who live in love are invincible. And that was particularly true of this family. This might actually be the reason why so many people are attracted to the Romanovs. It's not the tragedy that people are drawn to, but their happiness with one another. I was surprised to be approached by the fathers of the monastery for this project, and I remain incredibly honored that they asked me to participate in this extraordinary work of faith. The fathers of the monastery recognized that it would be an important book for the Orthodox of Greece, but they were mindful that this was no typical hagiography. Because there was so much historical material available to them, they were exceptionally careful about only going to verified original sources. And as a result, through their efforts, they have countered many myths and outright fabrications, which have been repeated for years in books. And I think all readers will be grateful for this. Their diligence and their honesty, coupled with their humility and the desire only to represent the Romanovs with respect and reverence, is an example I will carry with me in my own work going forward.